So thank you for joining us all today. I'm Zach Bador. I'm the Executive Director and the co-founder of Military Veterans in Journalism. And we're here today to commemorate the work that's been going on for the past month or two with the Military Veterans in Journalism Video Journalism Workshop put on by Du and Julian. We are thrilled that this has been able to happen. Thanks in large part to the Walton Family Foundation for letting us, helping to fund this effort. And also it's just been a support from from Fujifilm, as well as University of Mississippi, their journalism program, which allowed us to join all these great folks together to put on this event and bring in the teaching capabilities of Du and Julian. So thank you everybody involved, and thank you to the participants as well for showing up and participating in this great workshop. So thanks everybody all around. We're going to take this last session, this last class, to talk a little bit about video journalism, to talk about some of the challenges that veterans face, some of the positive things that veterans how they can use their backgrounds to break into this field and prosper in this field. Just a little bit about me. I was in the Navy from 2001 to 2006, working as a journalist, as they say in the Navy. So I was doing work for AFN, American Forces Network, across Asia and the Middle East. And then after that, my next assignment was aboard a ship, USS Peleliu, which is now decommissioned. So I guess that means I'm old. And yeah, I was doing public affairs, video, photo, radio, print, again, across the Pacific and in the Middle East. And wonderful experience, got to do a lot of great stuff, and I got out of the military and transitioned into journalism and other things over the years since 2006. And there were some ups and downs, but I've been really proud of the journalism work that I've been able to do. And I've also informally mentored other vets, which sort of led to the co-founding Military Veterans in Journalism with Russell Midori, a former Marine, and who was a journalist in New York. So we founded the organization to really support other vets who are working in journalism and who aspire to work in journalism. It's been quite a journey as we move forward in creating opportunities, whether it be internships, mentorships, fellowships, or events like these. So yeah, it's been really terrific to be able to work and support the community. Let me introduce the folks who are joining to talk in this panel. First, we have Ali Lurie. Ali, did I say that right? I'm sorry, I should have checked the names.
You did, you crushed it, Lurie.
Thank you. She is a social media producer at Fox News. She began her journalism career with Big Ten Network in 2010, where she worked as a camera operator, producer, director, and on-air talent until 2012, while obtaining 2 degrees in journalism and communication studies at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. She held internships at WCCO TV, which is a CBS affiliate, Fox Sports North, and eventually she was hired as a full-time reporter for WDIO TV, ABC, in Duluth, Minnesota, before commissioning in the Air Force. So from 2012 to 2020, Ali served as a public affairs officer and combat camera officer based in various international locations. She's since traveled and visited to over 85 countries and worked as a freelance filmmaker for various travel clients like Pacemade Travel and Semester at Sea. We also are joined by Jonathan Baran. Jonathan, did I butcher your last name, or did I get it all right?
No, that was pretty legit. I mean, most people I think say Baran, but I think Baran is the closer pronunciation.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And Jonathan is a video reporter on the financial desk at the Washington Post's San Francisco bureau, covering technology, business, and culture. He previously worked at Fortune Magazine, Forbes, Engadget, Newsweek, The Daily Beast, Reuters, and CBS News. He's also worked as a documentary producer and radio host and producer. Jonathan served in the Army from 2003 to 2008, including at the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force. He's got a master's in journalism from Columbia University and a bachelor's in media studies from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Finally, Daphne Davis Moore is the communications director at the Walton Foundation, where she leads all internal and external communications for the foundation. She directs all institutional foundation communications and branding and oversees media relations and messaging to advance the foundation's K-12 education, environment, and home region programs. Before joining the foundation, she spent 13 years at Walmart, holding various senior positions in public affairs, government relations, and corporate communications. She managed a 16-person government relations team working nationwide to secure store approvals and also served as regional director of government relations for the Northeast. Daphne began her career in journalism, working as a reporter at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Northwest Arkansas Times, and the Log Cabin Democrat in Conway, Arkansas. She holds a bachelor's in English and Mass Communication from Ouachita Baptist University, where she was the editor of her local college newspaper. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I pronounced your name correctly, Daphne. So thank you very much to you and to the others for joining today.
You landed it.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Right. So what I'd like to do, just starting a little bit more, we heard the bare facts. We heard a little bit about where everybody landed, who's on the panel today. I think what would be helpful for the vets on the call, and certainly I'm interested, is to learn about how that progress actually went, how veterans in this panel, and Daphne as well, we'd love to hear your story, went to achieve these goals and to progress in their journalism career. So Ali, I'd love to start with you, if you don't mind. If you could just tell us a little bit more behind the scenes of how you progressed in your career.
For sure, definitely. So I am somewhat new to Fox News. I was hired in June in the middle of the pandemic. So I actually haven't been inside the Fox News newsroom yet. But my entire background outside of the military is journalism. So I always knew that I wanted to be a storyteller. So when I was going to school, I got a bunch of internships specific to television news. So I was hired by an ABC affiliate as a television reporter in 2012 before I got into the military. So it just made sense once I left the military. It was the one thing that I knew. So it was easy for me to get back into it. But while I was in the military, I made sure that I always followed the news. So I did 8 years as public affairs and combat camera. But whenever there was any sort of major event, I just made sure that I was involved in some way, even outside of my official duties in the military. So, for example, I was in Italy when Benghazi happened. That was a huge thing. So I made sure that I was always raising my hand for opportunities to be the lead on some of those messaging campaigns. I was also in the Baltics when Russia invaded Ukraine. So made sure that I was always on the ground documenting kind of in my own capacity, because I knew that once I was done with the military, I wanted to get back into news. So that has helped me tremendously. Even up until 2020, as I was transitioning out, I went over to Australia during the 2020 bushfire crisis and made sure that I was on the ground on the East Coast while all that was happening, and really volunteering my time with like Team Rubicon, some of the other agencies out there, and creating free content for them. So that's more or less how I landed back into news, is I was just always in that mindset, even when I was in the military. So if that's something that you're trying to get into and you're in the midst of transitioning, definitely having those experiences help, because if you already know what's newsworthy and you know how to get that content, that is going to be such a huge sell to recruiters when you are trying to break into the newsroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali. I appreciate that. You sharing a little bit about your journey. Jonathan, let's head to you.
Hey guys, I wish I had like a master strategy when I embarked on this. I originally, so prior to, I enlisted after September 11th, 9/11 attacks in 2002 with deferred enlistment and activated in 2003. It kind of shows my age, but I was a 20-something film student, and that's what I thought I was going to do. That's what I wanted to do. So there's passion for an interest in storytelling, screenwriting, and film production. And after that, I've always been like raised in a news following family. Paid attention to the what was happening in the world, and then after those events was kind of a wake-up call for me and a lot of other people, of course. And so I did not join the military with any intent on continuing that path. I was like kind of disenfranchised in a way, just like joined 18 X-ray program and made it to Robin's Age. And then that was like 2 years of training, and I just wanted to get deployed and as fast as possible after being in the pipeline, school pipeline for a while. And so one of the sergeant majors at the JFK school said, "You've got language training, you've got communications background, join PSYOP." And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And I would like kind of fit right in because it's storytelling, propaganda, counter propaganda stuff. Deployed to volunteered 2 deployments to I had no idea what I was getting into to Joint Psychological Operations Task Force in Qatar and different capacities, and just like basically logistics, a lot of logistics handling for messaging, getting print in and out of theater, and pulling reports from the TPTs, the tactical teams in the field. And I did that for the remainder of my enlistment and kind of reporting to field grade officers. And then when I got out, I realized that like, this is not really for me. I kind of, again, was just like kind of saw how the sausage was made, and thought like, I like the storytelling aspect. It's like great, I like it, but I am hooked on news now. I like depended on podcasts before podcasts were a thing, before they were a thing, and after they were a thing. The first time they were a thing, and then so listened to a lot of podcasts while I was deployed, streamed a lot of news, and so I was hooked on radio. And I went back, I left my bachelor's degree on the table when I left. And so I went back to use the Montgomery GI post 9/11 Montgomery GI Bill to pursue journalism. Went back to University of North Carolina, Greensboro with the intent of becoming a radio journalist, and pursued that for a while, and then interned at a NPR affiliate in North Carolina, WFDD, and worked at the radio station and for a nonprofit producing radio documentaries about immigrant stories in North Carolina. And then, I applied to Columbia. I wanted to keep going. I still had some funding left for education, and that was like a great step, next step for me. And so I went to Columbia, and I actually at that point, that's when I got hooked on video, just because the way the school system was, the program was set up. And I took Du's class. Du was very kind enough to let me join in his class, and I didn't really feel much for the broadcast world. It really wasn't my style. And digital video, I really saw something that, like, I'm I guess a digital native. I'm a Gen Xer, but a young Gen Xer, but like digital is the way to go. So I wanted to pursue that. And then it was just like, who needs video? Well, magazines need video. Wire services. I was at Reuters, and Newsweek. And so I saw like an opportunity for like a little bit more in-depth story profiles and stuff like that for magazines who were getting on the web. And that's where I went into, Newsweek, Daily Beast, and Forbes and Fortune. And it kind of fit with the documentary style. So it was like little short news docs and stuff. And that, like I said, I wish I had like a plan, like a game plan, but it was just like accidents after accidents. Like I was just interested in technology. I was just, I grew up putting computer parts, computers together, and tinkering and stuff, and was like really plugged into tech. And Forbes was like, we want someone in San Francisco to do tech, and my kids knocking at my window. Anyway, so yeah, that was like, tech was kind of the way that I moved into that sort of tech background, kind of is what pushed me towards in that direction and brought me out to California, to San Francisco.
Thank you, Jonathan. One thing that I noticed, both of you, Daphne, we'll get to you in just a moment, but Jonathan and Natalie, both of you have sort of jumped around a little bit here and there. And could you talk a little bit about that, Jonathan, the why journalists often are jumping from one job to the next? It seems like they're here and there, and what the deal is with that. Just explain that if you would.
I would say that journalism is a perfect job for someone with attention deficit disorder. Like it is, if you can focus on something, if you don't have focus problems, like if you can focus and really like zone in on a story or a topic or an area for a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, that's your thing. And then you're like, okay, I'm on to the next thing. It's a really great job because you are depending on people who are smarter than you and are more experienced and wiser in that particular area. Like I'm not a tech person. I know a little bit. I know enough to get in trouble, but it's an interest area where I've been able to like focus and understand and build sourcing. But what it comes down to is that jumping around can be a benefit in the sense of like you have all these sort of surface, very thin understandings of things, but also allows you to sort of analogize and synthesize. And that's really what a lot of the storytelling comes down to, is like there's complex topic. You depend on experts and sources and people with their stories, and then you help them, you as a storyteller can synthesize and break it down into something that people who have no idea what the stuff is, what's happening, so that's digestible and understandable and relatable. So that jumping around, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, please finish what you were saying.
I was going to say that sort of jumping around like has actually, it was by accident in a lot of ways, but I think it has been beneficial because just that surface level understanding and ability to interact and relate to a lot of different people has helped me in interviews and sourcing and like I said, synthesizing, analogizing the material.
Thank you. And Ali, you went from various networks as well. I haven't worked as a staffer, actually. I've always been freelance throughout my career, but within the TV networks, I believe it's pretty standard, isn't it, to go from one network to the other? I mean, not necessarily a different network, but from different stations as you progress in your career.
It absolutely is. And I really think that's what distinguishes good journalists from the best journalists, is having a varied portfolio and resume when it comes to either TV or print or what have you. Because if you stay in the same spot for a long time, you run the risk of having like editorial tunnel vision in the sense that if you only ever see what Fox is putting out or CNN is putting out, you really limit yourself, in my opinion. And I think having varied experience really just sets you up for success, and not even in a TV sense, just in a job sense. I think the more experiences you have, the more competitive you naturally are going to be in the newsroom.
Thank you. Over to you, Daphne. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up where you are, and a little bit about your start in journalism and how you were able to take those skills and transition them into a related but different field.
Sure, thanks. And I mean, first, it's an honor to be on this panel and thank all of you for your service. I'm a granddaughter and a daughter of veterans. I was born at Fort Wainwright, Alaska. So, certainly stand on the shoulders of so many who have served. And it's, I mean, also to be on a panel with such impressive journalistic credentials, the college kid in me is geeking out a little bit. But I'll dial her back. I also started in journalism and spent 5 years at 3 jobs. So I think the same kind of moving around quite a bit. But went from there into corporate communications and corporate affairs at a very large company. Now working for a large private family foundation, the Walton Foundation, which is a family-led foundation. It's the children, grandchildren, their spouses of Sam and Helen Walton, our founders. Sam Walton also served in the Army, and really dedicated to creating access to opportunity for people and communities, and doing that through education and the environment and quality of life initiatives in the home region. And as I was thinking about like how our mission ties to the conversation here, I think of how the military created access for my grandfather, who joined the Marines at Mare Island back in the 20s. And my father, who was in college ROTC, became a captain in the Army, served in Vietnam, and moved us around a few times, as most military kids can say. So, those opportunities, I think, shaped their lives, obviously, and shaped mine. And so at the foundation, we really believe in the power of the individual to do whatever it is they want to do. And it's our role to help, just unlock the opportunity to do so.
Thank you so much. I'd like to talk a little bit about the value of being a veteran in journalism and how particularly Jonathan and Allie, how you've used your experiences to blossom within newsrooms and to use that experience. So let's start with Jonathan, please.
So I think it's come in handy in a lot of different ways, some expected, some unexpected. I think there's on the top of the head, I would say, it's sort of embrace the suck kind of thing. Like, if you've been able to make it through some of the military experiences you've made it through, pulling some all-nighters and grinding through edits and stories and, a small cell of people, just like, small closeted room, and just, working in close quarters with a tight-knit group of people for intense but short period of time. It's something that's, if you've been able to succeed at that, then you can do it elsewhere. And sometimes it's just like people who've said, this is really hard. You're like, well, I've done harder things. And so that sort of that experience really helped sort of temper me in that regard, like being level-headed under pressure and, not panicking in a panicking situation, but sort of keeping swivel about, and whether it's like covering protests or whatever, like just being able to stay calm and focus on what my profession is about, which is gathering the news and the facts. And so then there's the other side, which is like camaraderie and team, like being like not just being cool under pressure, but having fun with it, and realizing when there's time for levity and making this like just the wisecracks and stuff. But and then I would say also just it's come in handy in adding like that when questions about military or veterans or the culture have come up. It's like, well, hey guys, actually I can help you, and that's been sort of a nice surprise along the way, particularly in the last year, and in this I'd say since since May, like George Floyd protests after his death, and the events in Washington D.C. and protests everywhere, and like seeing militias and helping sort of help reporters clarify who's who and who are these people from, like what is this weapon, what is this badge, like what is this patch, like what sort of that kind of thing. Like I'd never expected to do that, but I can be a resource. And so those are just sort of, I say, the three main things. But it's like working in a team, I think, is and being able to do it under, I think that one just comes in every day, just being like a good human being when you're professionally stressed out and personally stressed out. Like it's really come in handy.
Hearing you talking about the similarities between journalism and time in the military makes me recall that one of the reasons I really appreciate and value my experiences in journalism is the public service element to it. Being able to continue to serve your community, your nation, your world, depending on what you're focusing on. And I wonder if that plays in for you as well, Jonathan. Is that something that you found that could sort of continuity in terms of your work?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. From the onset, when I left, and the conversations when I decided not to re-enlist with my senior NCOs were like, well, I swore an oath to protect the Constitution, and now like this is like my job is like just to exercise, my First Amendment right, not just wearing a uniform and putting my life on the line, or my time on the line to uphold the Constitution, but now I'm actually exercising it and helping others exercise their First Amendment rights to free speech and free press. So yes, that was definitely from the onset, like something that I realized I was passionate about, and that I wanted to make sure that I was doing with my life and my profession. It just that really, that service element, I was hooked, and I had civil servant parents, and it was kind of part of our upbringing. And coming out of the military, you're whether it's like a 2-year or 5-year or 8-year contract, whatever your contract is, that mission part of your life, like the mission and the team come first, and people, like it's it really fits like a glove for me, like when I think about that, of just this is what it's about. And absolutely.
Thank you. Turning to you, Ali, how does being a veteran affect your life and work in your newsroom? And how do you draw on your personal experiences?
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, I was hired in the middle of the pandemic when New York City was still considered the epicenter. And it was a really stressful time to get back into news, especially after an 8-year break, because we were gearing up for election coverage. Coronavirus was still 24/7. There was fallout from George Floyd's murder. So it was very chaotic. And when I was hired, my senior producers, they all said the same thing. They're like, Ali, this is going to be so hard. This is just going to be so hard. You're going to have a really hard time. And so it kind of like geeked me out. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, why did I decide now was the good time to get back into news? So I'm operating out of a studio apartment in Brooklyn off of what is probably the worst desk I've ever had. It's a web of HDMI cables and iPads and screens, because I have to recreate a studio in my apartment without any sort of guidance. I haven't met my teammates. I haven't met my bosses. I have to learn this completely new job pretty much all on my own. So I would say the value of being a vet, I don't know about anybody else, but this reminds me of pretty much every deployment I've ever been on, where you go to a brand new place and you have very little guidance on what to do and what resources you have. And you're expected to continue the mission as if nothing has changed and there hasn't been a transition at all. So doing that over and over, I think as vets, we really sell ourselves short in terms of how good we are at adapting. And if there was any time to really show that off, it was now, as an entire newsroom and workforce is operating remotely. So I think that's something that I definitely sold myself short on, even as I was interviewing. You just really don't realize how valuable that skill is until you're forced to do it for real, full time. So I think that's huge. I mean, we're good as vets at embracing the chaos, and news is just chaos constantly. It's, different times and different places, but it's all generally the same. And if you're confident at being able to navigate that, I think you're going to be golden.
Thanks, Ellie. So when you're interviewing for jobs, how do you bring up and talk about your veteran experience, or if at all? Is it something that you use to sort of promote yourself?
That's a great question. So when I first worked in news, it was before I was in the military, but my military career was just beginning. So I knew everything about news and journalism. I didn't know that much about the military. So a lot of my fellow reporters and anchors, they were like, what is this job you're about to do? Public affairs, what does that mean? Where are you going? So I think if we're used to living as a vet, and if our whole life was the military, we do operate a little bit in a bubble, and there's a new language that comes along with it. And a lot of that is kind of just hard for the other 99% of people who don't serve. It's hard for them to really kind of understand. So if you are going to talk about your military experience, which absolutely do, make sure you do it in a way that is easy to understand and easy for employers to see what value you bring into the newsroom. So in addition to that, I would say, as you are operating through the military in whatever capacity, whether you're active duty or reserve, make sure you're also doing something on the side so that it's not just your military experience that you're drawing on. Just like in finances, they say have a diverse portfolio. I think when you're looking for jobs, absolutely, as a journalist, you should have a diverse portfolio in that sense as well. So as I said before, when I was in the military, I made sure I was watching the news, and I made sure to always be thinking, okay, an employer that I talk to 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what's going to matter to them? What are they going to remember in the news cycle? And do I have something to draw on from that? Because even if they don't understand your job, they'll understand what you were doing at that moment in time. And that's an immediate connection that you can have to someone who has only ever really understood and worked in news, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Daphne, so you also started your career, as you mentioned, in journalism, working for some outlets in Arkansas. Tell us about some of the skills and the attributes that you were surprised about when you were starting your role as a reporter.
Sure. Well, and I think I realized them more after the fact. And these are things that I just heard both Jonathan and Allie touch on. One of the skills that I know I honed in just my short period of time as a journalist was what Jonathan said, to analyze and synthesize really complex things. And when I worked for a company, I did corporate communications for our legal work, which, translating what lawyers are saying can be kind of complicated, and breaking it down into something that others can understand. And then now in the foundation world, I work with some incredibly smart people who understand the issues that we work on, but understand them in such a deep way that, I draw upon that experience of, again, really quickly understanding issues, but then also breaking it down into something that is easy for others to understand and value. And then, and Jonathan also mentioned just the working under pressure on a deadline. That was definitely a skill that I built as a journalist, I'm early Generation X, so I actually remember having to go back to a newsroom to file a story because that was the only way you could do it, and had to do it on deadline. And I would write the story in my head as I was driving back to the newsroom to file. And so just the ability to kind of stay calm under pressure, and never mind the times that I hit the wrong button and lost the entire piece and had to resurrect it from the beginning. But then, Allie, you touched on something as well that again, I felt like as a reporter is where I learned it and honed it. And that was really just, the perseverance and resilience, and just knowing, you'll figure this out one way or the other, and just staying kind of calm under pressure. I think those are all things that, again, were skills that, aside from, the hard skills like writing, and for the folks participating here, video skills, it's these bigger, broader skills that I think journalism trains people in, and that they can carry throughout a journalism career or elsewhere.
Thank you. So we've talked about some of the awesome characteristics that vets bring to the table when they're working in journalism. Let's talk about some of the challenges as well of getting into the field and working in journalism. I know that when I transitioned out of the military, it was rough to get into journalism, and there were some ups and downs, and I was really proud of the journalism that I've made over the years. But just personally, I will say that I didn't have a good network, and I didn't have any mentors, and so I know that those were things that held me back as I was progressing professionally outside of the military. Ali, I'd like to turn it to you for a moment. What are some of the challenges that you think veterans face in terms of breaking into journalism?
A huge challenge, honestly, is the networking aspect. And I know that for sure firsthand, even having been in news before. When I left the military, I was really at a loss because there weren't networking events. There weren't people whose hands I could shake at any sort of happy hour or anything that we normally would rely on to make those connections. And so it was a huge struggle, and I really had to be so proactive, almost creepy in terms of how I got those mentors. So I went on LinkedIn and I went on Twitter, and I tried to be as involved as I could be in those discussions that some of those mentors were having with other people in the network. And the more that they see your name, the more that you bug them, eventually they'll say, hey, yeah, let's hop on a call, let's Zoom, let's work this out, let's see where you want to go and how to get you there. So you do have to be really aggressive if you don't already have that. And because I hadn't been in news for 8 years, most of my contacts I had lost. They had either moved on or were no longer working in news or working on the other side of the country. So, moving to a new place and starting over in New York City, even though it's huge and there's a ton of people, it was really just slim pickings in terms of who I could actually talk to. So you really do have to be aggressive, and events like these are great. Like this is huge. I'm so glad that this is happening. And I would say definitely take advantage of these panels and these information sessions, because that is more helpful than I met so many people just on the side chat on a Zoom call, just saying, hey, yeah, I have this thing in common with you. Let's chat. And that's just going to continue to be a huge thing. So if you don't already have it, don't be afraid to be aggressive in getting those contacts.
Absolutely, great advice. Jonathan, turning over to you, what sort of challenges do you think some vets face in getting into journalism?
I think I would say the first off is translating, the ability to translate and there's this necessity to translate what you did in the military onto your resume and into your career. And, I personally, that was I feel like I felt a little guilty about what I did or what I was involved in terms of news creation. I didn't want, I can't go to CNN or wherever I'm going and say, look, I worked in counter propaganda. This is what I did. and like I didn't want to. I had you know, I had people push me towards VOA, sort of not people like push me, like say like, yo, if you did that, then maybe you like to do this. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do. Like, I'm getting away from that. I'm like, so I had this like problem of like, you know, and I've talked with my friends who are, you know, in special forces and infantry, come from these like, you know, backgrounds where they're like, have it on their resume and like it translates to, you know, people want to put, you know, like a security guard or something, or a police officer or law enforcement, and that's not necessarily what they want to do. And I think that that's not an uncommon thing of struggling to take what you did in the military and like what your military career is and translating that directly into journalism. And that's why I think that those using it as background, and those soft skills, is really important. So I just went towards clips, like what I wanted to do, what the stories I was really interested in, personally, professionally. Look at who out there is producing what I like and what I'm into, like what, look at the content that really gets you, you know, like that you watch it and like blows your, you know, just blows your mind, and study it, analyze it, and then you know, not like copy it or emulate it, but figure out like how they did it. And then you know, that's, I think, when I went to Columbia and started, you know, really pushing myself toward on video, and went into the documentary program and doing digital video, like that was, I had some video skills before that. And then at that point then I thought this was really great. And I look back at now, like that was just a starting point, and that's okay. Like that's a good starting point, but you want to like build clips, and like if you want to get into video, or if you want to, you know, you want to report, like look at the bylines, find the people who are writing the stories, who are making the stories, who are producing them, and look at them. Like right now I'm on a big Alex Gibney kick. He's in my timeline. I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna like today I'm gonna watch, no, I'm not gonna watch WandaVision, I'm gonna watch Alex Gibney, you know, like just do a little study. And so I think that's okay. And that's like sort of, I'm kind of getting into another thing here, but I think I was trying to focus on my clips, and that ended up, you know, in that sort of magazine area, like leading me towards these like profile pieces, or being able to do doc style, and then look out there like, well, I want to do something different. Like I'm getting bored, or like this is like I'm doing the kind of same old. Then that way, like looking at what else is out there, staying creative. It doesn't have to, I'm not necessarily have to do like an Alex Gibney for tech. I mean, he does that stuff, but I can, you know, expand my horizons, and continue doing something that's also personally and professionally interesting. So, I mean, the networking thing it was big, but and like I can't say that Columbia didn't open doors for me, but I was like freelance at so many different places, just trying to figure out like how to pay my bills when I got out of Columbia. That I like landed all these like little weird jobs, where CBS religion unit, and then Reuters during like a YouTube push, and there was like, you know, tons of Facebook YouTube money, and so we were doing like weird kind of short packages, like really like 1-2 minute news packages for YouTube, and then all that stuff kind of led me into like I could build up my clip package and my, you know, basically my portfolio on a website. And then when it came time to go to the table, and like I was interviewing someplace, and they saw that military thing on my background, like on my resume, I didn't have to put it up at the top, you know, it's just like something at the bottom. It's like, oh wait, this person's different. Like you bring it in, and you come in, and you're like, you know, professional, you're well spoken, you know your shit, and you're like, I'm ready to work. And they, you know, people who are hiring managers, they like that, and they'll see that. And if you have that like personal passion for a topic and for news, and then you have that like that professional work ethic, you'll cut through. I feel like most veterans will can cut through a lot of uh, chafe to make themselves stand out.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, the portfolio is huge. I'm not doing journalism full time these days, but when I was constantly honing my portfolio just here and there to make sure it was in a good and strong place to be able to presentable for um, other work that can come up. Let's turn it over to Daphne. Give some sort of advice for vets who are looking to work in the field, especially those in the early part of their careers.
Yeah, I think I will second what was just said, that you can't, underestimate the value of a portfolio, because I think, really showing work is critical to any sort of position, whether it's in journalism or elsewhere. And then, of course, the value of networking. And gosh, I hadn't even thought about it in the time of a pandemic, but listening to Ali talk about how to, follow and kind of ease your way in a virtual setting is so smart and brilliant. And participating in things like this, absolutely, where you get the benefit of people who have been in this field for a while, as well as others who are new but have a fresh and different perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just flagging that we will be opening the floor up to questions in just a few minutes. So if anybody in the audience wants to ask, please get ready. I'm going to open that up in just a moment. Hopefully we have a few interesting questions. Finally, I'd just like to open it up as well to Ali and Jonathan to throw any other advice that they have for other vets who might be in the early stages of their career. Any other pointers?
I would say just one other thing that I really took for granted. Obviously, I knew that I wanted to go into news and I was doing the military thing kind of full time, but definitely think about what your interests are and what you eventually want your beat to be. So for example, I love travel. That is my biggest passion aside from news. So when I was freelancing, I made sure that I was constantly reaching out to clients that specialized in travel. So as a result of doing that, I was able to land short-term gigs with organizations like Semester at Sea, where I got to sail around the world and do nothing but photo and video the entire time. So you can imagine that was a huge boost for my portfolio, and that helped tremendously with everything going on also in the news world. I was also able to land a contract with Taste Made Travel, which they focus more on like short form videos for social media. But those are just invaluable connections. And if you already know, like, hey, I lean more toward tech, or I lean more toward government reporting or politics or whatever, just start building a portfolio specific to that. And if it interests you, it's something that you're probably already doing anyway. But being in news, they really gravitate to people who do have a beat or do have a particular interest. So I would say don't be afraid to hone in on that and be aggressive with that as you're reaching out to clients with freelance work.
Awesome. Thank you. Jonathan, any last comments?
Yeah, I would say this to kind of dovetail with Ali is to practice your pitch and keep a story list. Conversations that you're having with friends, family, yourself, you're wondering, like, if that's your interest area, like whatever it is, I keep a story list, and like conversations that I end up having, if it's like more than a 10-15 minute conversation with a friend, I'm going to write it down. Like, well, why were you so interested in that thing? Right. And so that's stuff that like I use every day, like at work. And if it's not for me, maybe it's for a colleague, but I'll always looking out for a story. And don't think that because you don't cover that, that's I don't cover business, or I don't cover science. Like, well, if you're thinking about that thing, I'm sure that if you are thinking about that thing and discussing it for more than 10-15 minutes, then a lot of other people are probably also have very similar questions, and that could be a story. And so keep a story list and keep an idea list, and that starts you on your like practicing your pitches. And then like asking, like if there's one of those that really pops out and sings, that really you think like, oh man, there's something there, then like write question list, like who do you need to talk to, like what will you need to figure this out, and like for visual, if it's visual, like what are the visual components of that story, and like just think about that constantly. That would be my last recommendation. Just like, that's what you need to do all the time.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I think we have one question at the moment coming from Billy. Billy, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, okay. I have a question about being a veteran, a person maybe in their 30s or their 40s, and catching up to that time missed, schlubbing it in the mailroom and paying your dues part. I've worked full-time for the Guard for over 20 years now. I guess I've been lucky because I could go back to a additional Guard status and dip my toe into the real world, and then, kind of come back scared, cold and wet and hungry, and get back on orders. But there was a time when I was like, I come from a public affairs background, broadcast journalist. And it occurred to me in my career years ago that I'm at this level and I'm never going to get above this level unless I'm around people who are better than me at what I do. In my little iPad, I have no, you need to be around, you don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. If you are, you need to find another room. So I was really wanting to step up my game from what I felt was mediocre work and get into the big leagues. And I was like, okay, the only way to do that is I'm going to have to quit this. I'm going to have to go work out in the real world. And I was working for a news station and a production house because I couldn't get a full-time one with each. Anyway, it took a long time. I was getting off work at midnight at the news station, and I was going to work at the production house 5 a.m. And I didn't expect to come in and they roll out the carpet for me, right? I had realistic expectations. I did start out on floor crew. I started out doing whatever they had that I could do, hoping to work my way up. But at the same time, I was a grown man, and it occurred to me in that industry that there were just years that I couldn't get back, that I missed, that I couldn't buy, that the people who worked in the industry had during their starving 20s and stuff of the crap gigs and sweeping the floors and stuff. And it was really hard for me to break the barrier. Like I tell my troops now in my MPAD, like, man, you think you got it bad with this equipment, go work for a news station. Like, you got to be somebody to actually sign out the freaking camera, or that was my experience. But anyway, how do you come in as a 36, 40-year-old into an industry and try to get it on the trail where you need to be at your age when you missed all of those years paying your dues?
Feel free to jump in.
As an old guy, I'll say that I feel that, like, I left the military in my 30s, and like I didn't have a degree. I left that on the, I had to go back and do that. And then so when I came to Columbia, it was all, it was like kids, and they felt like they were kids, like people in their 20s. And then I got into journalism, and it was more of the same. It was, people who had like a little bit more propensity and like and more risk averse, and like who I don't know, who like had more ability to take on debt. And like I didn't want that and couldn't do that. And so yeah, you're like, how much grind can I force upon myself and like get through this, and where am I gonna break, how am I gonna break through? And I jumped around. I think that was part of it. Was I did live like very like thin budget for a while, and I moved like it was basically like a 2-year plan almost. It was like almost every 2 years I was at a different publication and freelancing here and there along the way, and bumping elbows with people. And while I was doing that, like meeting people and like figuring out who is the, who is my friend in the room, and like who are the good people to work with, who are the, setting aside the toxicity and like finding the good people, and like working that way. And it was, I could never not work. I had to work, so I understand, like, if you're coming from one career and going into another career late, and you have, you're looking around, there's a lot of people who are a lot younger. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're at all that you're you can't do it, that you're incapable or anything. Actually, you have years and wiser. So I'd say that probably just means, and for me, I think that's where like some of the experimentation and looking around in the cinema world and in documentary world, at what people are doing, stories they're telling, and how they're making them happen is really really important. I'm not, nobody's giving me the green light to go do that, but that just prepares me for when, that I'm like, this story doesn't quite make sense in this traditional format. What if we told it like this? Or it just enables you to have those conversations when the opportunity arises. But yeah, it's I don't know. There's no, like, I don't really wish I had an easier, better answer, but yeah.
Ali, you want to jump in too?
Sure. Yeah, I think if your question is, how do I catch up and how do I make up for lost time? Unfortunately, I think the first step is acknowledging that you just simply can't. I know that was a huge question that I was asked during my various interviews for Fox was, okay, you haven't been in a newsroom for 8 years. Why are you someone who's going to be successful? And the answer is, well, I think I'm going to be successful because I wasn't in this newsroom for the last 8 years. I instead was doing this, and this is what I can bring in that's new for your newsroom. So I mean, you have to embrace the suck. It does suck, but you're going to be at the bottom of the totem pole when you first get in and when you first start. You really have to prove yourself in a newsroom. It's very cutthroat, even still in this day and age. And you're successful because you put in your time in the newsroom, or you're successful because you demonstrate that you're motivated enough to compete with people who've put in their time at the newsroom. It comes down to those two types of people. So I would say definitely align yourself with the latter, and just kind of refrain your mind in the sense that you're not necessarily competing against that lost time, because that's not fair to you. You can't make up for that. But because of your varied experience in the military, you absolutely are still competitive, and you can still compete with those people, and you can show them that, you've been in this newsroom doing this thing, but here's something that I can contribute. So it's finding that, whether it's in various freelance projects that you've done on the side, or just your willingness to go out and do a story that no one else really wants to cover. That's going to set you apart. And that's, I think, a huge part of how you become successful in news regardless.
Daphne, I see you have, thank you very much, Ali, I appreciate that. Daphne, I see your hand raised as well. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I would love to ask a question of Ali, Jonathan, and you as well, Zach. But we fund journalism because we believe an informed public that's smart on the issues that we care about are going to support solutions to the problems that we aim to fix. And one of the things that we want to learn is, like, what's next in journalism, because it's changing so fast. So if you guys would just do me the pleasure of pulling out your crystal balls, like the fact that, a print publication now has video journalists working for it. When I was in school, that wasn't on people's minds. So what are the future trends in journalism that folks on this call should be thinking about?
I'll jump in very quickly and say that I, track a lot of different outlets, and I track a lot of veteran news publications as well, including Task and Purpose and Duffel Blog, which are both run by the same person, Paul Zolda, who happens to serve on our board, and who are very supportive of military veterans journalism. And what it's interesting as I see them evolve is they're turning to newsletters. I think that's something that's probably going to be continuing that way, where outlets are relying on a very niche audience that supports them. And we see other folks like does Glenn Greenwald, does he do his own? Anyhow, there's other folks who have departed from news outlets and are now running their own Substacks as well. So I think that's definitely something that siloization basically of the media is going to continue, where it's a very niche audience, but they manage to get funding from their supporters who appreciate very specific coverage. I'll turn it over to Jonathan and Ali if they want to add anything.
Yeah, I think news is so much different than the last time I was in a newsroom almost a decade ago. As the internet grows and as more and more voices are being heard on a myriad of new platforms that are emerging every day, people are becoming a lot more selective in terms of what they not only consider news, but what they want to see in their newsfeed every single day. And you're really seeing a lot of networks change. I mean, I know Fox is changing dramatically to try to adjust to a post-Trump environment, and there's a kind of a divide within the network a little bit in terms of who their next audience is going to be and who they want to target. And especially in television, it is still a business, and they do still value advertising and what does the money say, what does the money point to. And so news is starting to fracture a little bit in terms of where you now get it, in that there's a completely different audience, at least in Fox, that watches TV and watches the network and watches the channel, and there's a whole new audience that interacts on social media, which is where I work. So sometimes I don't even recognize the coverage that happens on the channel, because it's so kind of opposite to maybe what we're focusing on social media. So I think you're going to continue to see networks have to adapt to where the information comes from and who the audience is on that specific platform. And we're seeing that quite a bit, especially with different platforms like Facebook and Twitter that maybe were at the forefront, having to compete with new platforms with maybe different rules and regulations like Parler. So I think it's going to continue to change. It's going to continue to get weird and evolve. And like I said, as a reporter and someone in news, you just have to be flexible and learn to adapt with that. I think all in all, we don't really know where it's going to be. And that's what makes news in this day and age such a challenge to consume.
Yeah,
Jonathan, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I would just say that, I mean, like we've seen this sort of cycle of we can't necessarily call it monopolization, but where you have basically conglomerates and collective larger and larger ownership of TV and newspaper outlets, and then on the flip side, you have this on the technology platforms where information is freely and quickly shared, and that's damaged media finances and the market. So it's hard to say like what's going to happen. I don't think that the ownership it's necessarily going to get any better. I think it's going to be fewer and fewer players. But at the same time, I think that some of the traditional there's going to be a mix. Like I mean, and where people are. Where outlets will do things that are not necessarily their traditional role, and that I think in Washington Post, I think has like really done something. I know it's like the live team has done some really phenomenal stuff, and is really actually. I mean, and I mean this as like I work for them. I'm a Washington Post staff. I can I feel like I watch it and I listen to it and I understand more, I'm smarter for it. Whereas if I turn on broadcast news, it's like a lot of punditry and a lot of back chatter that doesn't really make sense, doesn't push the story. Like we're, Post Live is like following the story and then like giving like a deeper context to understand what's about to happen, what could happen potentially, but it's not necessarily pushing me in a direction of like which way to think about something. It's like the information and the reporting, the facts are there, and the possibility of what's happening. And I think that it's been really fascinating to see that like evolve and grow over the last year. I think that's going to continue to grow. I don't know if that's something that other outlets will do, live, like setting up live stream, and like, especially with like a deep bench of experienced journalists, like not everyone has that. But I think that's like something that could happen. And I think that platforms are starting to like play around with this idea that it could happen so that others could do that. And whether that's like on their own, be able to create that, whether it's like the Twitter moments or something like that. Sorry.
We got a star. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Jonathan. I should also take this moment to promote military veterans journalism, which, we have various mentoring opportunities, various networking opportunities, various career development events like this one that can really help and support this community of veterans who are looking to get into journalism. So I would encourage everybody who's on the call to take advantage of those resources. We're building them out every day. And I love the question that Daphne asked, because as we think about the future of journalism, I think we should also be sure that it's diverse and it's inclusive. And so the sponsorship from the Walton Family Foundation to put on this event, for example, goes to help achieve that end. We are trying to build out some of the skills of veterans so they can work in this field. So thanks to the foundation, thanks to Ali and Jonathan for joining on the call. Thanks to Heather as behind the scenes, and Daphne as well from the foundation. Thank you very much for your support. To Do and Julian for teaching, to the participants for taking part in this workshop, Fujifilm for getting involved and providing the gear and a great prize that'll be awarded in the coming weeks, and finally the University of Mississippi. So we've gone a little bit over our hour mark, but a wonderful conversation. Thanks to everybody who contributed. And before we go, I'll see if Do has any final words, since he's running the workshop.
Well, I feel it's almost not quite over because they still have work to do, but I will say that it's been a great honor to work with the organization, with vets. It sounds almost cliche to say, we're grateful for your service, but us dudes that never served, we really mean that. And so, and we're grateful to give anything that we can. And it's just the beginning of a relationship, I've not just with the participants, but the organization. So Zach, thanks for bringing us in. Daphne, thanks for everyone at Walton to facilitate this. Jonathan, great to see you. Ali, good luck. I know moving back to New York is probably weird, but for the rest of the vets, keep on crunching. We look forward to seeing the final work, and then we're looking forward to bragging about it when it's all done. But everyone did a fantastic job, and thanks to Julian, who basically ran the show for me, so I took it quite easy. So grateful for that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. All right, well, I hope you all have a lovely week and the rest of this federal holiday. Thanks for joining us.